Hey, welcome to Try This, a series of audio courses from the Washington Post, designed to help you take on common challenges and learn something new, and learn it pretty quickly. Like when there's a presidential election coming and you need to be able to tell your kids or friends at happy hour how the Electoral College works. I'm Christina Quinn, and I'm a journalist at the Post. Each Try This course has anywhere from 2 to 5 classes, or episodes. In this course, we'll have 3 episodes dedicated to understanding the Electoral College. You see, our mission at Try This is to help us all be better functioning humans. And why not be a better functioning citizen while we're at it? I love some good civic engagement. Okay, class is in session. Let's try this. Hey guys, hello.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm Aaron Blake, senior political reporter at the Washington Post.
And I'm Amy Gardner, and I cover election issues for the Post's democracy team.
Well, that's really fortuitous because this course is about the Electoral College, and it seems like I've got the right folks in the room.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, we're about to find out. So
Thank you for your confidence.
Let's just dive in. What is the Electoral College?
It's a series of events. It's not a place or a building, and it doesn't happen in one location. It is the gathering of the presidential electors of the winning candidate in each state, who then cast their electoral votes for that candidate.
In other words, the Electoral College is the system Americans use to elect the president and vice president every 4 years. Each state has a designated number of electors, and generally, each elector has one job: to place an official vote for the candidate who won the most overall votes in their respective state.
So you go and you cast your ballot as a regular voter on Election Day or in early voting or by mail. You're technically, legally not casting your ballot for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. You're casting your ballot for that party's electors.
Who are these people?
They're often party officials. Basically, you have to be a citizen and you have to be a resident of the state in which you're going to be an elector, and that's kind of it, and a registered voter.
The U.S. Constitution doesn't have a lot of rules on who can be an elector. It does say you can't be a senator or representative. Makes sense. And you can't be serving in certain other roles. Also, the 14th Amendment says if someone has been involved in a rebellion against the United States or helped its enemies, that's also a no-go. That goes back to the era after the Civil War. How many electoral votes are there in total?
538.
Yeah, there are 538 electoral votes nationwide.
And that's why everyone's always throwing that number around.
Yeah, and you need to get to a majority of those. So you need 270 electoral votes to win. It's not enough to have the most electoral votes. You have to have a majority of electoral votes to be elected the president. And if nobody gets that majority, which can happen, the election actually goes over to the House of Representatives, where there is another complicated process where it can be handled.
Okay, I am here for all of the complicated processes, and I can't wait to talk more about the House and this just-in-case scenario.
Yeah.
But when it comes to getting to 270 electoral votes, Aaron, I want to understand more about how a candidate gets a state's electoral votes. I've heard winner takes all a lot, but what does that actually mean?
So it means that if the candidate gets 50.00000000001% of the vote in a state, in the 48 states that give all their electoral votes to the winner, that candidate gets every single electoral vote from that state. You know, they would get the same number of electoral votes if they had won 99.99999% of votes. And winning that, slightest of victories is the same as winning a landslide victory in that state.
Okay, so how many electoral votes does each state get?
The distribution of electoral college votes around the country is based on population. It's not arbitrary. Each state gets the number of electoral college votes equal to the number of members of the House of Representatives that they have, plus 2 Senate seats.
So the more congressional districts a state has, the more electoral votes it gets?
So obviously the giant states have giant numbers of electoral votes. California has 54, Texas has 40, Florida has 30, and on and on and on.
So, and then if you add all of that up together for all 50 states, plus the 3 electors from Washington, D.C., you come to 538 total electors.
That's right.
The number 538 is not set forth in the Constitution. The number of members of Congress has changed over time, and that is something that Congress can change itself, but it has been at 435 members of the U.S. House for a long time. Some states have more electoral votes than others because they have more population, and the number of electoral votes, of course, is dependent upon congressional districts, and the number of congressional districts in a given state is determined every 10 years after the census. So states can rise and fall in the number of electoral votes they get, just like they rise and fall in the number of congressional districts.
All right, so you'd think bigger states, more electoral votes, more power, right? That's not quite the case.
On its surface, a state with more electoral votes has more power because they give a number of electoral votes that's greater than other states. But we also have a situation in which 40 out of 50 states simply are not competitive, and there's no incentive for the candidates to campaign in them. They're pretty much determined before the election ever starts. And so while they contribute a lot of electoral votes to the process, they're not actually getting attention from the candidates. And so basically our process has become one where a universe of 6, 7, 8 swing states are the ones that are getting all of the attention from the campaigns and the ones that are really deciding our presidential elections.
And just to complicate things even more, winner take all is the predominant way states award their electoral votes, but not for every state.
There are 2 states that don't have winner take all law on the electoral college votes from their state. Nebraska and Maine apportion their electoral votes by congressional districts.
So instead of assigning all their electoral votes to the candidate who wins the state's popular vote, they split them. In Maine, 2 electoral votes go to the statewide winner, and 2 go to whichever candidate won each congressional district. In Nebraska, same thing, except they have 3 congressional districts.
It tells you how close our presidential elections are, that for the last numerous cycles that I can remember, you see presidential candidates campaigning in Nebraska and Maine a lot, like in an outsized way. And it's because any good presidential campaign doesn't leave anything on the field and doesn't take anything to chance. And who's to say when we might have a tie? It can happen.
Yeah, so what would happen if there were a tie?
So if neither candidate has a majority of the 538 electoral votes, so neither candidate gets to 270, either because it's tied at 269 or there's a third-party candidate winning some of the votes, the race actually goes to the House. And what happens in the House, according to the 12th Amendment, is that each state is given 1 vote to be determined by its congressional delegation. So each congressional delegation comes together and decides who their state is going to vote for. And so 1 member in Wyoming determines their state, while the 52 members in California determine their vote, and the winner of a majority of the House votes at that point would be elected the president.
That is the if emergency break glass scenario. But say it's business as usual, and the Electoral College process puts a candidate at 270 electoral votes. That's just the start of the process to make a presidential win official. We'll dig into the rest of the process coming up. We often, but not always, know who wins a presidential election on or shortly after Election Day. But the process for making a presidential win official actually lasts into the following January, ending with a joint session of Congress. Here's what happens. After all of the votes in a state have been counted, and after a whole lot of paperwork, a winner is declared in each state.
Basically, you have some county entity, whether it is a superintendent of elections or a board of canvassers or a board of elections, that certifies the county results. And then you have a state official or board that certifies the result at the state level.
Electors finally meet in person in their respective states in mid-December.
So what happens typically is that the Secretary of State or the governor is the sort of person who puts the final seal of an outcome on their state's vote.
Next, each state sends documents called certificates of ascertainment off to Washington.
And there's a really cool detail. The states have these, in some cases, beautiful leather-bound boxes with these gorgeous bronze or brass, buckles. And it's all very formal and interesting, and there's pomp, and it's kind of cool. The certificates are in there, or at least Congress's copy.
So the box, the pageantry involved in delivering this ornate box with the certificates, if I'm coming from the West Coast, that's a long haul. That's a long ride. Isn't there an easier way to do this?
Can't we just do a fax?
Yeah.
But they have time. I mean, there's 2 weeks between the Electoral College meeting and the joint session convening. And it's not every state, by the way. It's really funny. Some of the states have these gorgeous 100-year-old or 150-year-old boxes, but others, it's like in a manila folder.
The vice president and Congress gather all these certificates and then count the state's votes on January 6th. Once the votes are counted and certified, the winning candidate officially becomes the president-elect. That's why rioters stormed the Capitol on January 6th in 2021. It was an effort by supporters of then-President Trump to stop this process.
January 6th is that final step. And once they vote, that's the president-elect, and then that person is inaugurated on January 20th.
That is how we get a new president. Every 4 years, using this complicated system. And in case you're wondering about the national popular vote, also known as which candidate gets the most actual votes across the country, the most important thing to know is that it doesn't get anyone elected. That's right, the election comes down to the Electoral College only. So it's a good thing you know exactly how it works now. Okay, quick recap. The Electoral College is the system used to elect presidents in the United States. Each state is assigned a number of electoral votes based on its state's number of congressional districts plus its 2 senators. In every state but Maine and Nebraska, the candidate with the most votes in that state wins all of its electoral votes, the winner-take-all system. Candidates must earn 270 electoral votes in order to win the presidency. If there's a tie, the House intervenes and chooses a winner. Got it? Cool. That's it for Class 1. In our second class, we'll explore how in the world we ended up with such a complex system to begin with. If you want to learn more about the Electoral College and explore the paths to electoral victory for each of the 2024 presidential candidates, you can check out the link in our show notes. All right, I'll meet you in Class 2.